Alright, it's time for another Drawing in the Dark. My name is Levi Smith, and today we are going to be drawing Voltron, the lion version. This one was quite a challenge. I've never drawn Voltron before, and drawing humanoid robots can be a little tricky. You know, there's definitely some things that you need to keep in mind. I find it to be a lot easier to just try to, especially with these ones, maintain regular human proportions, try to put them in like good action poses. A lot of the reference that I was looking at for this Voltron piece, for the old Voltron and the new, and I'm drawing the classic one. A lot of the reference though seemed pretty stiff, especially the classic one, just a character just standing there. And the newer ones were quite a bit more dynamic, but there were some simplifications in the character design for the Voltron robot that I thought they were cool. They definitely looked more modern, but didn't evoke to me what I wanted to draw out of this. I mean, really, in my mind's eye, you know, when I added Voltron to my robots list, I really had something more in mind of the classic one, and then looking stuff up to, you know, put together a bit of reference, do some study. I was pretty surprised by how much they had changed and omitted from the old design to the new design. And I watched like the first 2 episodes of the new Voltron, where, you know, I watched the original Voltron quite a bit as a kid, and the newer one, I mean, it was good, and it definitely still felt like, you know, like the original Voltron felt to me. I really liked that about it, but at the same time, you know, I mean, it wasn't something I absolutely had to keep watching. I didn't find it to be very compelling, honestly. Even though it is definitely in my wheelhouse of interests, I really didn't find it to be, you know, something that I needed to watch. And but I mean, it was a fun character to draw. Definitely tricky. You know, there were a number of times in this piece where I just really wasn't sure how I was going to solve things like the lion face hands and feet, doing a more dynamic pose and still maintaining a more classic look to him. So that was definitely an interesting challenge with this one. And as you can see, you know, even up until this point here, I've really just been working out the basic shapes, the composition, the posing, you know, the general proportions and stuff, slowly working in various elements that become more important as far as like the character construction, the form, stuff like that from the character design. And you know, but drawing this one, it really had me thinking about you know, the original Voltron cartoon, and, you know, really how that was a whole like era in television and in America, and I think it's pretty singular as far as a generational thing as well, because there weren't, before like the you know, 80s and 90s with cartoons aimed at kids specifically to sell toys, action figures, play sets, and all that kind of stuff. You know, there really hasn't been a whole lot of that since then, at least not to the degree, I think. And I mean, I guess you could say with like, it's like a permanent fixture, I guess, you know, because, you know, people are selling tons of like Bluey merchandise and stuff, Peppa Pig, stuff like that. But really, I think it was, it came down heavy and hard in the 80s and 90s with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, G.I. Joe, He-Man, Barbie, My Little Pony, Care Bears. Star Wars really, you know, was a big pioneer on this, where, you know, the shows became, they just turned out to be more of a vehicle for merchandising sales. And so even to the point of so many of these cartoons that were created specifically to move toys and merchandise that you could sell way more He-Man figures if you had a cartoon to accompany it. You know, same thing with the G.I. Joe figures and stuff. And honestly, it was really effective because I would watch G.I. Joe or He-Man, and with, you know, my figures in hand, and then after watching the show, go and play with my action figures and stuff. Same thing with cartoons like Mask, and you know, I'm trying to think of other ones that actually had like toys that accompanied them, because those were some of my favorite cartoons as well, the ones that I could get the toys from. And yeah, but thinking about that and how that generation just bombarded with all of this marketing advertising, and, you know, the jingles and theme songs and slogans and stuff from advertising that are so locked into our head. And then at the same time, you know, this tends to be the generation that thinks that they're somehow immune to mass marketing. When, you know, you bring up the opening bars of the DuckTales, the original DuckTales theme song, and they're in. You know, they know all the words. Gen Xers, you know, we are far more commercially programmed, I think, than we would like to believe, and I think to a degree more than other generations, really. You know, because we grew up in it. You know, I didn't know any different. I didn't know anything else. You know, how is there a point of resistance or a way to escape it? Especially as a kid, and then growing up in the, you know, being a teenager and in my 20s, in the late 90s, you know, through tons and tons and tons of television and marketing, and it was just crazy. And so I've been thinking a little bit about that, and about how you know, people are shaped by what seems like culture that really just ends up being marketing, and it's weird to me. Yeah, you know, and so here I am drawing Voltron, one of my favorite cartoon action figure combos. I never actually got. I think I had one of the lions as like an independent figure, where I got the little guy and I had the die-cast metal lion, and but I never had one of the sets that fully went together. I did have, as a kid, the vehicle Voltron, and I can't remember the actual like name of it, but I did, you know, it stood like, you know, 2.5 feet tall when it was all put together and stuff, and it all came in one box, and there was tons of little cars and jets and stuff, you know, and you put it together like a 3-dimensional puzzle. And but I did have that as a kid, and I remember that one being cool in the sense that it was a big robot, but also that it being not cool because it wasn't the lions, and that was the cartoon. You know, I'd never seen the cartoon for the vehicles. I have since then because of YouTube, but yeah, as a kid it was just like, what is this? This is Voltron? This isn't Voltron. You know, this is some other kind of weird vehicle Voltron. But, you know, it was cool. You make do with it. But, this particular character, I always liked, I don't know, that like there's a weird, like fantasy kind of aspect to this, like sci-fi, and kind of like in the same way that like He-Man was really like a sword and sorcery Conan fantasy, with all these science fiction elements tossed in. Just on the side, no real good explanation for why it was all merged or anything, and it worked. Honestly, I think sometimes people will over-explain why different fantasy or high-tech elements are within their storytelling. Where, you've got Voltron, which is clearly a knight. He's got, he's swinging a sword. He's got this whole helmet thing going on, the chest plate, the star on his belt. He's kind of like this superhero knight, really stands like a knight. The dressing of the whole show is really focused around this, fantasy kind of environment, but then you've got all this high tech everywhere, and it's pretty interesting. And I don't know. There's something about all of that. I guess it's probably been deeply programmed into my mind as far as genres and tropes that I would love to see more of that kind of like melding, that He-Man and Voltron did of science fiction and fantasy elements and stuff. High-tech knights kind of thing. It doesn't have to make sense. And sometimes the fantasy elements about it allow you to focus more on what makes sense characterization wise versus world building wise. And I think that might be, where we get so carried away and so caught up and involved in the world building of some storytelling, and not so much the characterization and letting the characterization be the main factor, which I think always ends up being more interesting. Always. You don't need as much world building. There's a lot of stories that don't have as much, that do much better and invoke the imagination much stronger than the ones where years and decades of world building have been established. And sometimes it gets in the way. Sometimes it just gets in the way of good storytelling. But anyway, I think we're about here at the end, and so I just want to remind you all that Kenny and I do a podcast called Pop Culture Classics. You can find that wherever you can watch podcasts. We have art books available on Amazon. Just check those out. The links are all in the description, of course. T-shirts and stuff. We're making stuff out here and trying to sell it to you with a little bit of content as an advertisement writer, right? So anyway, thanks for stopping by. I appreciate you watching, especially if you've gotten this far, and we'll catch you later.